They called it just an old plantation past the Mulberry Trail. But when a preacher comes to call, he finds the cotton field still tended by a scarecrow wearing boots too real and a locket too familiar. The house is cold, the stove half full, and not a soul stirs beneath the lantern soot. Then someone digs up the root cellar, and what they find is bound, stuffed, and staring with coins over its eyes. The stitching is too clean, the silence too deliberate. What kind of man hangs his master in a field? And why did he leave a page missing from the ledger? If you would like me to continue creating stories so that this history, which is not taught in schools, is not forgotten, please subscribe to this channel. Write in the comments where you are watching from. The August heat shimmers across the abandoned cotton field as Elder Grover Langley's boots crush dried stalks beneath him. At first glance, the scarecrow appears ordinary enough, just another sentinel keeping watch over a dying plantation. But something about its posture draws him closer, despite the dread building in his chest. "Hello? Mr. Mercer?" His voice cracks in the morning air. No response comes from the silent house behind him, where breakfast still sits rotting on the table. Only the buzz of fat summer flies answers his call. The scarecrow looms larger with each step. Its Confederate grey coat, faded and worn, hangs oddly stiff on the frame. Straw pokes through tears in the fabric, and a burlap sack serves as its crude face. But it's the boots that make Elder Langley's breath catch. Real leather, cracked and mud-caked, far too solid to be mere decoration. "Dear Lord in heaven," he whispers, fingering the worn Bible in his coat pocket. The figure stands perfectly straight, arms spread wide across its wooden frame. A strange dark stain has seeped into the earth around its base. Something metallic glints at its throat, a silver locket suspended from a tarnished chain. With trembling fingers, Langley reaches out and touches the cool metal. The clasp springs open with an angry snap. Inside, protected from the elements, a daguerreotype shows a stern-faced Thaddeus Mercer standing beside his wife, Sarah, her dark eyes serious beneath her bonnet. The same locket Langley had seen at Sarah's funeral 3 years prior, when Mercer had clutched it through the entire service. Langley staggers backward, his cane slipping in the dry earth. The smell hits him then, not just the usual rot of summer, but something deeper and sweeter. Something wrong. His eyes track up to where crude stitches hold the coat closed at the chest. He makes it halfway to his horse before his legs give out. Kneeling in the dirt, he fumbles with his pocket watch, forcing his shaking hands to wind the telegram mechanism. The message he manages to tap out is brief. Sheriff Mathers stop former Confederate found crucified in cotton field. Stop come immediately. Stop Elder Langley, Bears Hollow. Stop the mechanical. Clicks echo across the empty field as Langley waits for confirmation. Behind him, the scarecrow keeps its silent vigil, the silver locket glinting in the rising sun. A crow lands on its outstretched arm, tilts its head, and begins to peck at the fraying sleeve. Langley doesn't look back. He can't. Instead, he grips his cane tighter and begins muttering Psalm 23 under his breath, the words tumbling out faster and faster until they tangle together in a desperate whisper. The reply from Selma comes quickly. "Received, stop deputies en route. Stop secure scene, stop, do not touch anything further. Stop!" But Langley has already broken that last command. He can still feel the cold weight of that locket against his palm, still see those stern faces staring up at him. And now, as he waits for help to arrive, he realizes with growing horror that he recognizes the boots on the scarecrow's feet, the same ones Mercer wore every Sunday to church, right down to the missing heel on the left sole. Sheriff Lloyd Mathers reins his horse at the edge of the cotton field, dust settling around the hooves of his mount and those of his 2 deputies. The August sun beats down mercilessly as they dismount, boots crunching on the parched earth. Elder Langley stands waiting beneath a scraggly oak, dabbing his forehead with a handkerchief. "Elder," Mathers nods, adjusting his badge. "Doctor's wagon's about 10 minutes behind us." The Scarecrow towers before them, its grey uniform stark against the cloudless sky. Mathers approaches with measured steps, his hand resting on his holstered revolver, more from habit than necessity. The silver locket catches the light, spinning slowly. "Nobody's touched anything else?" he asks, circling the figure. "No, sir," Langley replies. "Just the locket. Lord forgive me." Dr. C.W. Lawton's wagon rattles up the dirt road 20 minutes later. The physician carries his worn leather satchel, spectacles already fogging in the heat. "Sheriff," he says, setting his bag down. "Shall we?" They work methodically. The deputies carefully cut the figure down while Lawton directs them, ensuring nothing is disturbed. As the coat falls open, the full horror is revealed. The ribcage has been split and splayed like a bird's wings, the cavity stuffed with fresh straw. The cuts are precise, almost surgical. "Look here," Lawton points with his pencil, making notes in his ledger. "These incisions, clean work. Whoever did this knew anatomy." He adjusts his spectacles, leaning closer. "And here, this healed wound in the chest, consistent with the Shiloh injury in my records." Mathers kneels beside him. "You treated him after the war?" "Many times. That bullet wound never healed right." Lawton's finger traces another scar. "This matches too. Where we took his ring finger after gangrene set in. Spring of '66, if I recall." The head is missing entirely, removed at the base of the neck with the same surgical precision. Dark fluid has soaked into the collar of the uniform, drawing flies despite the morning cool. "When did you last see him alive?" Mathers asks Elder Langley. "Church service, 3 Sundays past. He was coughing worse than usual. Deputy Wilson emerges from the slave quarters, shaking his head. All empty, Sheriff. Bed stripped clean, personal effects gone. No sign of struggle. They find Mercer's ledger open on his desk, the leather cover warped from humidity. Mathers runs his finger down the final entry, dated July 21st. Cotton yields, repair costs, mundane calculations in Mercer's careful hand. But the next page has been torn out cleanly, leaving only a thin strip of paper along the binding. 3 men unaccounted for, Mathers says, closing the ledger. Isaac, Jonah, and Ezekiel, the freedmen who stayed on. Isaac came into town for sewing supplies about a month ago, Elder Langley offers. Haven't seen any of them since. Mathers nods grimly, pulling out his own notebook. He writes 3 descriptions while Dr. Lawton continues his examination. Within the hour, reward notices are drafted for the neighboring counties. Wanted for questioning. Isaac Granger, 27, tall, thin, walks with pronounced limp. Jonah Tate, 32, broad-shouldered, quiet disposition. Ezekiel, age unknown, grey-haired, missing left ear. The notices go out with the afternoon mail rider, spreading in all directions from Bears Hollow. The search for Mercer's former slaves begins as the summer sun beats down on the abandoned cotton field, where a broken scarecrow frame now lies empty in the dust. The bell above Jasper Hemley's general store chimes as Deputy Wilson pushes through the door, letting in a blast of August heat. The shopkeeper looks up from his inventory ledger, adjusting his wire-rimmed spectacles. "Deputy?" Hemley nods, setting down his pencil. "Suppose you're here about the Mercer business." Wilson pulls out his notepad. "Any of his men been in lately?" Hemley scratches his chin, eyes drifting to the ceiling's tobacco-stained beams. Matter of fact, yes. The quiet one, the one with the twisted foot. Came in July 19th, right before closing. He shuffles through some papers beneath the counter. Still got the sales slip here somewhere. The deputy leans forward. What did he buy? Heavy twine, the kind used for baling. 3 steel sewing needles, good ones. Hemley pauses, brow furrowing. Oh, and a jar of pig's brine. Odd request that late in summer. Which way did he head out? South Road toward the woods, walking alone, which was strange. Those 3 usually moved together. Outside, Deputy Charles Rafe's horse kicks up dust along the settlement roads. The morning sun beats down as he stops at each cabin and farmhouse, asking the same questions about strangers or unusual camps. At the edge of town, he finds old May washing clothes in her yard. The washerwoman's dark hands wring a sheet as she speaks. Heard something peculiar early July, she says, voice wavering. Night sounds like screaming, thought it was panthers at first. She hangs the sheet, hands trembling slightly. But panthers don't cry like that. Not like a man does. Back at the Mercer plantation, Sheriff Mathers descends the smokehouse steps, lantern casting shadows on the earthen walls. The air is thick with old salt and iron. His boot catches on a loose floorboard, and he kneels to examine it. Over here, he calls up to Dr. Lawton. Together they pry up the plank. Beneath it lies a rusty saw blade, its teeth caked with something dark and flaking. Lawton holds it up to the lantern. Blood, the doctor confirms quietly. Old, but not more than a few weeks. By late afternoon, a messenger arrives from Selma, carrying word from Sebastian Cole, the town's cobbler. The man practically trips over himself entering the sheriff's office. Mr. Cole says those boots, the ones on the Scarecrow. The messenger catches his breath. He made them special for Mr. Mercer last winter. Had to adjust for a bone spur on his right foot. Says there's no mistaking his work. Sheriff Mathers studies the boots now laid out on his desk, caked with field mud, but unmistakably custom-made. The right sole shows the telltale modification Cole described. Get me everything Cole knows about when Mercer last came to his shop, Mathers tells the messenger, and find out if anyone else ordered similar work recently. The evidence accumulates like storm clouds. The twine, the saw, the boots. Each piece pointing toward something deliberate, calculated. Something that began in the heat of early July, when a man with a limp walked south with needles and brine, and strange cries echoed through the woods that old May mistook for panthers. Sheriff Mathers sits at his desk, the oil lamp casting a weak glow across the parchment before him. His quill scratches steadily as he composes the official request. To the Bureau of Freedmen, Montgomery Office, August 6th, 1869. I write to request immediate assistance in locating 3 freedmen formerly employed at the Mercer plantation in Bears Hollow, Dallas County. Their disappearance coincides with the death of their employer, Thaddeus Mercer, under suspicious circumstances. He details their descriptions. Isaac, with his distinctive limp and quiet demeanor. Jonah, broad-shouldered and known for his skill with horses. Ezekiel, the eldest, with graying temples and scarred hands from years in the cotton fields. The letter fills 2 pages, each carefully sealed with red wax bearing the sheriff's official stamp. At dawn, the courier departs on horseback, leather satchel secured to his saddle. The sky hangs low and grey, threatening rain. By mid-morning, the storms arrive. Water pounds the earth in heavy sheets, turning the red clay roads into treacherous ribbons of mud. South of Mulberry Trail, where the land dips toward Silver Fork Creek, the courier's horse loses its footing. The satchel, though oiled against weather, takes on water as they struggle through the flooding lowlands. When the rider finally reaches higher ground, the letters inside are illegible, the ink bleeding across sodden pages. Meanwhile, Silas Dunham's wagon creaks up to the sheriff's office through the downpour. The farmer, soaked to the skin, recounts what he saw the previous week, thin wisps of smoke rising from the woods behind Mercer's property line. "Thought nothing of it at the time," Dunham explains, water dripping from his hat brim. "Folks burn trash, clear brush. But given what's happened..." 2 deputies accompany Dunham back to the site, despite the worsening weather. They find a depression in the earth, partially collapsed from the rain. What might have been a carefully dug pit is now a muddy crater, its contents obscured by the rising groundwater. Deputy Wilson attempts to probe the hole with a long stick, but the sides are unstable, threatening to cave in further. The rain continues to fall, filling the pit faster than they can examine it. "We'll need proper equipment," Sheriff Mathers decides, watching the water rise, "and men who know how to shore up earthworks." He turns to Deputy Rafe. "Send word to the railroad crew camped near Selma. Tell them I'll pay fair wages for a day's digging once this weather clears." The deputies post a guard at the site, but the rains persist for days. The roads become impassable. Wagons sink to their axles in mud. The telegraph lines to Montgomery go silent, likely downed by falling branches. It isn't until Thursday morning that the clouds finally break. Sheriff Mathers stands at his office window, watching the sun burn through the mist. On his desk lies the ruined letter meant for Montgomery, its waterlogged pages curled and faded. Outside, the first of the railroad workers arrive with shovels and timber for shoring, ready to uncover whatever secrets lie buried in that rain-soaked earth. The morning sun burns off the last of the fog as 6 prison laborers, their ankles chained in pairs, dig through the red Alabama clay. Sheriff Mathers watches from beneath an oak tree, his leather-bound notebook open on his knee. Dr. Lawton stands nearby, medical bag at his feet, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "Careful now," Deputy Wilson calls as one shovel strikes something solid. "Easy with those tools." The laborers step back, revealing a wooden door set flush with the ground, its hinges nearly dissolved by rust and moisture. No handle remains, just a rotted rope loop that crumbles at the touch. "This ain't on any property map," Mathers says, consulting his notes. "Mercer's deed shows 3 cellars, all attached to the main house." 2 deputies pry the door open with iron bars. The wet wood splinters with a sick crack. Stale air rises from the darkness, carrying the unmistakable sweetness of decay. Dr. Lawton ties a cloth over his nose and mouth. "I'll need more light." Lanterns are lowered into the hole. Their glow reveals crude earthen walls, supported by rotting timber. At the bottom of 3 steep steps, laid out, on a bed of mouldering hay, lies a body. "That's Jonah," Deputy Wilson says quietly. "Recognize those shoulders anywhere." The corpse is carefully arranged, hands crossed at the chest, bound with familiar twine. Cotton protrudes from the gaping mouth, packed tight as a gag. 2 dull circles of metal catch the lamplight. Confederate dollars placed over the eyes, their embossed wreaths of cotton and tobacco, now green with corrosion. Dr. Lawton descends carefully, testing each step. "Body's been here months, given the state of decay. Hands were bound, ante-mortem. See the bruising at the wrists, mouth stuffed while still breathing, based on the tissue damage." Beneath the body, something metallic gleams. A deputy reaches down and pulls free a rusted tin box, sealed with wax despite the damp. Inside, protected from rot, lies a leather-bound ledger. "This isn't the one from his desk," Mathers says, turning the unfamiliar volume in his hands. The pages fall open to recent entries, the neat columns of plantation accounts, giving way to crude, childlike scrawl, I is not animal, I is man. When he beat me, he call me Scarecrow. Now he scare, now he crow. Tucked beside the ledger, a knife with a handle of polished bone catches the lantern light. Crude letters are carved into the pale surface. ISAAC. Get Judge Morton, Mathers orders, carefully wrapping the ledger in oiled cloth. This needs proper documentation before we move anything else. Dr. Lawton kneels beside the body, examining the coins. Confederate currency. Worthless now, except as a message. Someone wanted him sealed up with the old money, the old cotton, the old ways. Package that ledger careful, Mathers tells his deputy. I want Benjamin Wade in Selma to look at it. He taught at the colored school before the war, knows freedmen's writing. Might tell us if those words are really Isaac's. The sun climbs higher as they work, casting stark shadows into the pit. Each item is logged, mapped, sketched in the sheriff's notebook. Above them, turkey vultures begin to circle, drawn by the cellar's opened secrets. The Bears Hollow courthouse creaks with late summer heat as Mr. Otis Bell settles into the witness chair. His barber's apron is carefully folded across his lap, starched white despite the 3-hour train journey from Montgomery. Sheriff Mathers stands near the pot-bellied stove, now cold, while Judge Morton adjusts his spectacles. State your name and occupation for the record, the court clerk intones, dipping his pen. Otis James Bell. I operate Bell's Tonsorial Parlor on Market Street in Montgomery, just across from the Capitol building. His fingers worry the edge of his apron. Been cutting hair there 17 years this October. And what brings you to Bears Hollow today, Mr. Bell? Bell reaches into his vest pocket and withdraws a folded newspaper, the Selma Courier, dated August 28th. This article here, about the Scarecrow murder. The sketch of the knife caught my eye. I recognized it straight away. Sheriff Mathers places the evidence box on the clerk's desk. From it, he removes the bone-handled knife found in the root cellar, now cleaned and wrapped in cotton cloth. This knife? Yes, sir. That's the one. Man who carried it worked for me. Brief spell back in January. Called himself Zeke. Quiet sort. Good with a broom and razor both. Kept to himself, mostly. How long did he work for you? 3 weeks, thereabouts. Showed up one morning looking for work. Had a pronounced limp, favored his left leg. Noticed a long scar across his palm, too, when he'd reach for the shaving mugs. Bell pauses, dabbing his forehead with a handkerchief. What struck me most was how he'd watch folks in the mirror while he swept. Never met their eyes direct, but studied them just the same. Judge Morton leans forward. You mentioned something about an incident with a cat. Yes, Your Honor. Found him out back of the shop one morning. There was this dead alley cat. Looked like it had been hit by a wagon. He had his sewing kit out, was stitching its mouth closed with twine. Neat as you please. Bell's voice drops. When I asked him why, he looks up calm as anything and says, Sometimes the mouth tells on you. The clerk's pen scratches across the affidavit paper. Sheriff Mathers produces the spool of twine purchased from Jasper Hemley's store. Similar to this? Same type, yes, sir. He carried it in his pocket, along with that knife. And when did he leave your employ? Next day after the cat incident. Never came back for his wages, neither. Left a worn Bible in the back room. Nothing written inside except some scattered X marks on the pages. Judge Morton examines the knife again. You're certain this is the same implement? Those marks on the handle, they weren't letters then, but I remember the bone being scratched up similar. He'd sit cleaning it during quiet spells, running his thumb over those grooves. The sheriff consults his notebook. The physical description you provided, the limp, The palm scar matches what we know of Isaac Granger, one of Mercer's former bondsmen. Would you be willing to identify him if found? Yes, sir, I would. Man like that leaves an impression. Judge Morton signs the affidavit with a flourish. Given this testimony and the existing evidence, I hereby authorize a warrant for the arrest of Isaac Granger, also known as Zeke, on suspicion of murder and concealment of deaths. The courthouse falls silent, save for the drone of cicadas through the open windows. Sheriff Mathers carefully rewraps the knife, returning it to the evidence box. We'll wire the description to Mobile first. Port towns attract men looking to disappear. Dawn creeps across Bayou La Batre's shipyards, painting the sleeping vessels in watery gold. Sheriff Mathers dismounts near the foreman's shack, his boots sinking into the soft mud. The air hangs thick with salt and rotting fish, different from the cotton-sweet air of Bears Hollow, but no less heavy with secrets. Foreman James Tucker meets him at the door, a tin cup of coffee cooling in his weathered hands. "Found your man's bedroll still in the tool shed," he says, leading the way past stacks of timber and coiled rope. "Worked here 3 weeks under the name Elijah. Never gave a family name." The tool shed squats between 2 half-built sloops, its door hanging loose on rusted hinges. Inside, a thin pallet lies rolled against the wall. Beside it, a tin box and scattered newspapers. "After that dock worker got stabbed Tuesday night," Tucker continues, "Elijah didn't show for morning muster. Boys found blood on the pier posts, but couldn't say whose." Mathers kneels beside the pallet, careful not to disturb the arrangement. The victim's description matched our man. Tall, quiet sort. Favored his left leg something fierce when tired, kept to himself but worked steady. Good with knots and rigging. Tucker shifts uncomfortably. "Truth be told, Sheriff, something wasn't right with him. Found him once staring at gulls fighting over fish guts, just watching, still as stone, for hours." The sheriff opens the tin box. Inside, a worn Bible, a spool of twine, and an envelope stuffed with newspaper clippings. Most are from the Selma Courier, dated August. One bears a bold headline: "Scarecrow Mercer found crucified in cotton field." Red ink circles the words, bleeding through the thin paper. "He read these at night," Tucker says, "by lantern light. Could hear him muttering sometimes, like he was practicing words." Mathers produces the arrest warrant, signed by Mobile's circuit judge. "We'll need to search the yard. Man like this doesn't travel far without purpose." They find Isaac 2 days later, curled beneath an overturned skiff on the beach. He doesn't resist when the deputies bind his wrists. His clothes are stiff with salt and fish scales, but his eyes are clear and focused. "Why'd you run, Isaac?" Mathers asks, watching the deputies search the suspect's few belongings. Isaac's voice is soft, unused. "Because birds don't like to be watched when they eat." "Sir," Deputy Rafe calls from the skiff, "found something else." He emerges with a bundled rag. Unwrapped, it reveals a second bone-handled knife, smaller than the first, but with similar craftsmanship. Carved into the handle, crude but readable. Jonah. Mathers holds the knife up to the grey morning light. "This belonged to your friend?" Isaac's face remains still as marsh water. "Everything belongs to someone, Sheriff. Even the crows that clean battlefields had mothers." The deputies lead him to the waiting wagon. Tucker watches from the pier, his morning coffee forgotten in his hands. "Sheriff," he calls as Mathers mounts up. "What was he running from?" Mathers tucks the second knife into his evidence pouch. "Not from, Mr. Tucker. Toward. Men like this are always moving toward something." The wagon creaks into motion, bearing Isaac north toward Mobile's courthouse. Behind them, the shipyard slowly wakes to life, hammers and saws drowning out the crying of the gulls. Morning light filters through the high windows of the Selma courthouse, casting long shadows across the prosecution's table. District Attorney William Hayes unfolds the yellowed pages of the parish registry with careful hands. The leather binding crackles as he smooths the document before Judge Marcus Whitmore. Your Honor, I present the baptismal record of St. Matthew's Parish, dated June 12, 1864. Hayes's voice carries through the hushed chamber. Entry number 37 reads, Isaac, age approximately 10 years, property of Thaddeus Mercer. The attending priest noted distinguishing marks, a pronounced limp of the left foot, birthmark below right ear resembling a crescent moon, and a deep scar across the left palm. In the defendant's box, Isaac sits motionless, hands folded in his lap. His eyes track the document's movement, but his expression remains unchanged. Furthermore, Hayes continues, we have testimony from Miss Adelaide Morton, former schoolmistress of Bears Hollow. He gestures to a stern-faced woman in black bombazine. She has examined both the original plantation ledger and known examples of Jonah Tate's mark. Miss Morton rises, her spine straight as a fence post. I taught freedmen's children after the war. Jonah Tate came to 3 lessons before Mr. Mercer forbade it. The man could not form letters, could barely hold a pen. The writing in that ledger, crude as it is, shows understanding of basic letter forms. It matches samples we've obtained from the defendant's possessions. Dr. Jerome Phillips, the court-appointed alienist from Montgomery, takes the stand next. His gold-rimmed spectacles catch the light as he consults his notes. I conducted 6 interviews with the accused over 2 weeks, Phillips states. He demonstrates complete awareness of his actions and their consequences. However, his fixations are remarkable. Birds, particularly crows and their feeding habits, the act of sewing or binding, and the symbolic significance of silence. The doctor adjusts his spectacles. When shown drawings of the Scarecrow configuration, he displayed what I would term satisfied recognition. Hayes approaches the evidence table, lifting 2 bone-handled knives in their muslin wrappings. Both weapons were found in the defendant's possession, one marked with his own name, one with his victim's. The blade widths match the incisions described in Dr. Lawton's examination of both bodies. Isaac's gaze follows the knives, but he remains still, refusing even to whisper to his court-appointed defender. And now, Hayes says, producing a folded paper sealed in wax, a final piece of evidence, recovered yesterday from the Mercer house. He breaks the seal carefully. A page torn from Thaddeus Mercer's original plantation ledger, concealed in the spine of his family Bible. The entry is dated July 20th, 1869, the day before his disappearance. The courtroom leans forward as Hayes reads, Boy Isaac watching birds again. Found him in the cotton field, standing like one of his own scarecrows. When struck, he never makes a sound. Jonah says fever touched his mind as a child. But I see calculation in those eyes. Must speak to the sheriff about. The entry ends mid-sentence, the paper torn diagonally across. Isaac's hands remain folded, but his eyes now fix on a crow perched outside the courthouse window, its black feathers gleaming in the morning sun. Dawn breaks cold over Selma's town square. Frost rimes the wooden platform erected the previous night, its fresh-cut pine boards already darkening with morning dew. Sheriff Mathers stands at the base of the gallows, watching his breath cloud in the autumn air. His leather-bound notebook, its pages swollen with depositions and diagrams, weighs heavy in his coat pocket. Above, the hemp rope swings gentle as a pendulum. Townfolk gather in clusters, their Sunday clothes muted under heavy shawls and woolen coats. Children peek from behind mothers' skirts, though most families kept their little ones home today. At precisely 6 bells, the jail wagon arrives. Its iron-bound wheels crack through thin puddles left by yesterday's rain. 2 deputies flank Isaac as he descends, chains rattling softly. He wears clean prison cotton, feet bare despite the cold. His limp is more pronounced on the frozen ground. The crowd draws back as he passes. Some make signs against evil, others simply stare. Isaac's gaze remains fixed ahead, his expression unchanged since his arrest. That same distant focus, as if watching something move just beyond human sight. Reverend Thomas begins reading from his Bible, but his words scatter in the morning wind. When the noose is fitted, the hemp rough against dark skin, Isaac speaks for the first time since his conviction. His voice carries clear across the square. He hung men like me from trees. I gave him the field. The trapdoor drops with a sharp crack. Birds scatter from the courthouse roof. By noon, the square is empty. Children who watched from windows now whisper new rhymes in schoolyard corners. Silver locket, Scarecrow's eye. Watch the crows come home to die. Sheriff Mathers completes his final report that evening, his office lamp burning late while autumn wind rattles the windows. Each piece of evidence is catalogued: the knives, the ledger, the torn page, the locket. But questions gnaw at him like winter mice. He rides out to the Mercer property one last time. The house stands empty, its windows dark holes in the twilight. Inside, dust has settled thick over everything, except fresh boot prints leading to the study. In the parish registry, still open on Mercer's desk where the circuit judge left it, something catches his eye. Below Isaac's baptism entry, a faint pencil mark he's never noticed before. The handwriting is different from both Mercer's flowing script and Isaac's crude. Letters it reads simply, "The boy watches the birds." Too long. Mathers holds the page closer to his lamp. The note's author remains unknown, not matching any hand from the investigation's hundreds of documents. Later that night, reviewing evidence before it's sealed away, he unfolds the torn ledger page once more. The paper is creased and water-stained, but the words remain clear enough. He say if I write. The entry ends there, torn mid-sentence. But it's the header that troubles him now. At the top, clearly penned in Mercer's hand, Account of Jonah, July 1869. Mathers stares at the page for a long time. Outside his office window, crows wheel against the darkening sky, their calls carrying across the empty square where the gallows still stands.